Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the RealNex webinar series. Today we are talking about prioritized prospecting. I'm Jeff Finn and joined by Matthew Smith. Today we'll be talking about how do you rank your prospects from active clients to your A, B, and C tier to set up timely engagements on a monthly, quarterly, annual process, how to use timelines to get people into a sequence of communication so you never miss a beat, and how do you profile your best buyers, tenants, and potential sellers for targeted marketing, and use that to predict when your clients might be active to buy, sell, or hold, and know what the right time is to engage with them, and then to track key dates in your system like lease expirations, options, and other key events to make sure you get ahead of the curve and never miss a renewal or an extension or other opportunity, and stay in front of your business development pursuits, and to make sure you're contacting your clients with a purpose, with updates, with market data, with news that's relevant to them. And in short, how do you take the thousands of prospects you have in your database and focus on the 50 to 100 that might be most active today, and make sure you're communicating with the full database in a sequence, but really focusing your time on those that might be ripe and ready to go and engage you for business opportunities. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt to go through the process with you. And as always, we will be recording the session and making it available for your review later or for sharing. And we are open for questions along the way, so please chime in and we'll do our best to address any that you have.
Thanks, Jeff. As always, today we're going to be talking about prioritized prospecting. So really just making sure that we're front and center with everybody. And it goes back to, what I consistently say all the time, and I just said it to some clients most recently. It's about really branding yourself prior to. A lot of people want to get engaged with a client when their lease is renewing, when their loan is maturing, and so forth. This is about getting in front of the curve, so we're not trying to fill our pipeline at the end as it's dry and so forth. As you see from my screen here, I have quite a few fields that I keep track of for investor details. Now, this could be done with tenant details. This can be done with any other details within inside of the program. You can put all the details on one screen by simply putting your mouse over the caption and right-clicking and edit layout. And what I've done here is I added in some fields so that I can make sure that I'm prospecting in a proprietized way, that I always know that I need to touch my clients in a rating every 30 days. And my Bs I'm going to touch every 90 days, and my Cs I'm going to touch every 180 days. Whatever your cadence is, whether it's monthly, quarterly, annual, whether you use A, B, or C, 1, 2, 3, or whatever your client rating is, we want to make sure that you categorize that in here, and then you understand how to engage those clients in multiple ways. One of the ways I'll show you how to engage them and keep on track is utilizing the timelines. So once you go ahead and you create your section, whether it's client rating or cadence or steps or whatever that would be, it's always good to make sure that you utilize a save filter to find that information. Simply just go ahead and right click and say filter. What that's going to do is it's going to pop up a section over here that's going to say client rating contains. Once you go ahead and set that up, like A, B, and C, like I have here, I can select my A's, I can hit save, and then I can come over here and say save as. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to pull up those clients in my A rating so I can organize them in an orderly fashion. I recommend a time block. I have a time block where I have certain things that I do. So maybe you want to have a recurring event that says, hey, in every 90 days, call your Bs, every 180 days, call your Cs, and every month, call your A's. But can you imagine if you have 100 A's, 100 B's, and 100 C's or more? Maybe your market's really big, maybe your market's small. I'm not really sure exactly what your market is, but imagine if you had to do that over and over and over again. I always tell people that there are a couple ways to manage all those events. One is just simply by doing this, find your contact with inside of the database, or find one primary contact that you like to have. I like to have myself in my database. And the reason I do is I like to be able to have my emails that I can track underneath that for all the history and activities. I also will click on next activity. And what I will do is I'll create a cadence here. And I'm going to say client A. And then I'm going to say maybe it's a phone call because I call my client A's. Or maybe I'm going to text all my client A's. Or maybe I'm going to email all my client A's. Whatever that event type is, you can select that event type that you have. I typically don't worry about alarms or priorities, but if you're into alarms or priorities, you can do so. An alarm will allow you to have an alert that pops up that can synchronize into your Outlook or Gmail as well. And then what I do is I typically have a timeless. Timeless means that it can happen anytime during the day. It doesn't pop up at a certain time. If you do have a time block, maybe you do want to have it timed. That's perfectly fine with that. And then I go ahead and make that reoccurring. Reoccurring would allow you to go ahead and have that, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly. You can go ahead and set that timeline. And I'll let you go in and mess around with this on your own. But instead of having, 100 different events for each one of your A client ratings, you can have one event that reminds you every 30 days to call your A clients. And then what I like to do is I'll close out of here, and I'm going to simply check my filter box here and hit the play button. Now, you can have a filter tied to a view. I don't necessarily call all my A clients from a tile view. I like to use a list view or a combined view. So I'll go ahead and select my list view here, and you can see my list view's already set up. So it shows my client rating, and then it shows some information that I have on that client. It also shows a date verified. I like to hit the date verified button as a touch button. So every time I make a touch with a client, I know that when I call them, I left a message for them, and I go ahead and hit verify in the right-hand corner. That will then update it. Works really well for me every time I make a touch. If I do not leave a voicemail or I do not connect with them, I do not hit the verify button. And again, it allows me to go through my A clients relatively fast. It allows me to go through my B clients relatively fast and my C clients relatively fast. I can also see if I'm missing any information. Maybe I'm missing information on their target cap rate or what their pet is. It gives me a reason to call, have a conversation, and get some information. I can also click on the history tab. That way I have the ability to go ahead and see whether or not emails are coming across and so forth with my clients and my A, B, and C rating within inside of there. So it allows me to be fully engaged on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis. And I can even go ahead and set up timelines within inside of our system here. Now, one of the things you can do is you can start working on detailed ownership and acquisition profiles. But before I get to detailed ownership and acquisition profiles, I want to tell you another way to follow up with those clients. We do have grouping in here, so we do have unlimited grouping. So if you do want to use groups instead of filters, I highly recommend using filters over groups, but you can use groups for your client A, B, and C as well. Again, I like this. Some like coffee, some like tea. Use what works best for you. Now, another way to do that is to engage a timeline. So one of the things that we can do is we can say, for Ken, because Ken's a certain client rating, maybe he's a client C and we want to bring him to a B or an A or a 1 or a 2 or 3, you simply can right click and you can say schedule timeline. And this will allow you to create a series of events based upon what you're doing. Maybe it's a business development timeline, and on week 7 you make a phone call in 7 days you make a phone call, in 10 days you send a text, and then you go ahead and you email on day 15. It'll remind you to do each one of those, and I always recommend you check your history to see whether they responded and so forth, so you're not calling somebody or texting somebody with a message that they've already responded to in something previous. Maybe you're talking about something for like a lease expiration. We'll talk a little bit more as we move on, but what this does, it will show you a series of events that are easily created. And I'll walk through a little bit more how to create these timelines as we progress inside this meeting today. So that's one way that you can go ahead and keep track of your A, B, and C's, your 1, 2s, and 3s. your top 100, 300, and 500. It's an easy way to do it. And I like to use the time blocking, again, utilize what you feel is best. Another one is keeping track of detailed ownership and acquisition profiles. You can do that on the contact record like I've done here under the profile side to start keeping track of, what are they currently invest in? Or if you're working with tenants, what is their current lease expiration that they have for their building? What is their square footage and effective rent and other information? Another great place to keep this information on is the company profile. Company profile gives you the ability to keep track of all that same information, but on a company level. Maybe that company has multiple locations, maybe it's a large company, or maybe it's a small company. Keeping track of the company information level is a great way, so we can see, hey, this is a current client, the headquarters are in their branch, and these are the markets that they invest in or lease in. So again, you can do this on a company level, so where you have multiple contacts, or maybe it's a partnership level where there's 5 different owners and they're across the country, or maybe they're in the same city or state. This will allow you to get some profiling on that ownership and acquisition profile, so we can start to match buyers and sellers and tenants in space. Utilizing things like RX data, we can also start getting into a little bit more of the predictive analytics. And when we talk about predictive analytics, we want to make sure that we're talking about, what are their typical hold periods and loan maturities. One of the things we've been doing lately with RX data is calculate the information for you. So within the properties that gets brought into the RealNex solution, we're starting to look at those hold periods, and then we're starting to tie that up under the LLC. We're also looking at loan maturity information. We're putting that information under the property. We're trying to give you a bunch of different data points, so then you have a reason to call the client and start to build that relationship. Another way you can start to build that relationship up as well is with their different mix of properties. Maybe they're primarily an industrial purchaser, but they're starting to make hotel purchases now. Maybe they're starting to switch over what they're doing and they need a 1031 out of their industrial. Or maybe they have a lonesome multifamily property in their portfolio of all office. Those are some of the things that you can look at inside of here as you're starting to get more detailed information, acquisition profiles, and then start to get the predictive analytics. So as we're talking to Pat, we find out, Pat, that their primary industrial purchasers, but they purchased all the industrial properties they decided to do, and now they're going to be focusing on office. They're not looking to sell their industrial, but now we can go ahead and we can update their profile and update their information right inside of here, including what property types did they invest in. Maybe they went from, healthcare and then hospitality and industrial. Just using simple checkboxes like this, that way anytime that you have a new opportunity, we can match that opportunity to a prospective buyer. Again, the more detailed information you have on the ownership and acquisition profiles, the easier it is for you to match buyers and sellers and tenants in space within the program. We want to make sure that you're getting into those predictive hold periods. And again, as we tie that information up under the company, we can start using the comparable data along with their current profile of properties to start seeing the hold periods. And those hold periods then will populate underneath the company side of things. So you can imagine as we get more and more data and you're ingesting more and more information inside the RealNex program to then start to get that information aggregated so you can see that these 10 companies typically hold their properties for 5 years. We can see the properties that are linked to those companies, and now we can start getting in front of them as they've owned this property for 2 years, this property for 3 years, this property for 4 years, and we can start having really constructive conversations prior to their 5-year hold period that they typically do underneath their belt. It also gives you an advantage when you're calling on these clients to have that conversation around what their profile looks like, what do they typically purchase, and what are their hold periods, and what have they done in the past, and is the past going to be predictive of the future? So when you have that conversation with Pat, it becomes a little bit more of a warm call than a cold call, and it just becomes a lot easier for you. A couple other things you can do with inside of our program as well is not only keep track of your A, B, and C clients, and those clients, you can do that, as many people have asked here, can I do that on a company record? Of course you can. Can you do it on a contact record? 100%. Can I do it on a property record? Of course. There's no wrong way to engage your prospects. whether that you're trying to own your market and you're trying to go after all 100 properties or 1,000 properties that trade in your area, or you're doing it on a company or contact level profile. You can do it all within inside of our system. And again, we always recommend that you create a filter. Just right click on one of those captions and hit filter. It'll pop the information up to the top with your filter, and then put your data points in there, hit save, and now you can go ahead and have those data points right inside the platform for you. Now, when it comes to the loan maturity, that loan maturity information will be on the property data, as well as lease renewals, options, and market events will be most likely on the property in the space. So if we go ahead and we jump into the property side of things, you're going to start to see that we can filter it out on many different data points, whether that's the contact, the company, or the property as a data point. If I simply go here and put my list view, I can see things like loan amount, interest rate, and I can add in different fields in here for loan maturity or transaction date. To add more information in here so you can see that and you can look at more predictive likelihoods, just simply go click views and hit edit. You can type in the field that you're looking for if you know the field you're looking for in the search field, or you can just simply go ahead and click down here on the left-hand side. As you click down here on the left-hand side, that will populate like this, and just double click it and we'll start filling in the right-hand side. Once you get a view you like, you can simply hit save as, new, or if you're updating a view, hit existing, and that will then allow you to apply that view, and here you go. Now you can add filters to that view. So not only is it doing a view, but it's also doing a filter like I've done here. And some of these here will add a view and a filter to it. This one here is a demo view filter, and I'm going to go ahead and click on this one. And that way I can start seeing, hey, I want to see loan maturities in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, and so forth. And I don't have to go and search for the information. I don't have to remember the information. All I have to do is have a reoccurring event that every Monday I go ahead and look for all properties in those cadences, 24, 18, 12, 6, 3, and then loan maturity. And then again, you can bring the information in from third-party sources via Excel. You can import as much information as you want. You can purchase data from us that we populated in here as normalized data through the RX data program as well. That information then can be utilized based upon any one of those filters. That information can be applied to not only the properties, but it can be applied to the spaces. So a space is what a tenant would occupy inside any one of those buildings. So if you're a landlord broker or a tenant broker, spaces is a fantastic way to be able to make sure you're always staying front and center with your clients. Now, what's a great way to work on a lease renewal, an option, and have a good cadence is when you start that lease. So let's think about, we went ahead and we leased floor 1, suite 100, and we leased it to Plastic Graphics. Once we lease that space, I can go ahead and simply right click and say schedule timeline. Whether it's a 5-year lease, a 10-year lease, a 20-year lease, I can choose any one of these event types that I have in here for my timeline template. To create a timeline template, all you simply do is say add new timeline, choose the timeline. I'm going to say 7-year lease renewal. Now, once I have my 7-year lease renewal, and make sure you spell it correctly or type it correctly, go ahead and hit save. Then you're going to come down here and you're going to say edit template by putting your mouse over here. From here, I can decide to add an event. My first event is going to be thank you. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a thank you phone call, as well as I'm going to go ahead and send them a personal letter. So I'm going to create a thank you letter, and I'm going to make priority normal, and I'm going to say it's going to start in 7 days because I don't want to do it as soon as we commence the lease. It should only take me about 1 day, so that's how long it's going to be for the duration. Color, I like light blue, so that's going to stay. I don't need an alarm, and it is timeless, so it'll show on my calendar, my dashboard, and it will synchronize to my Gmail or Outlook. I can add additional participants. So maybe I'm not the one that's going to go ahead and do this event. I might assign this over to James. So then I can go over here and say participants. So that way James knows he can do it. I can also add additional information down here in the notes section that might help James create the thank you letter. Hey, James, this is a thank you for a client that has a 7-year lease with a 5-year option. Now I can hit save. So James knows that this timeline is used for a 7-year lease with an option in 5 years. I can add additional phases if I want. So if I want to add another section or add an additional event. The benefit of having a timeline is it creates all this with a couple clicks of a button, and it includes a Gantt chart. So not only can you show your clients of what you're going to be doing for them, how you do things to make sure that they're always happy within their space, always happy within their process or transaction. These can be applied to anything, whether it's a football season or it's a property you're selling, a property you're leasing, business development or prospecting, or even prioritized prospecting, you can use a timeline for. These timeline events can be associated to different people on your team in different places. Anniversary 1, 2, and 3, I handle, but on the renewal option, Jeff's going to handle. So then I can assign this one to Jeff. I can even drag and drop each one of these events. So if I need to move them around from timeline to timeline, I can do so, and I can delete the timeline. I can also print that timeline if I need to print the timeline to show my client what I typically do for them during the business development, why I'm looking for space for them, or anything else that is associated to the usage of our program. You can also use any one of those filters views in here. Now, a lot of people tell me, hey, Matt, I'm a generalist and I do a little bit of everything. Can I do all this inside of the RealNex program? 100%. And the reason why I like to do the filters is because you can create a filter and you can create a view. You can create many filters if you want to, right? So let's just go here to my demo lease expiration. This will allow me to put up lease expirations, and I can go ahead and say lease expiration, in this case, not empty. Maybe I'm going to say lease expiration is greater than or equal to. Now, instead of using a date, I'm going to say today plus or today minus. So I can say lease expiration is going to be today plus 30 days. And then I can add one that says lease expiration is less than 30 days or 90 days or whatever my cadence would be. And then it automatically searches the system for you when you go ahead and enact that filter or activate that filter. So again, it allows you to really just use the data within inside of your program, and it makes it easy. If you have a recurring event for yourself to every Monday morning when I get in the office, I check loan maturities, I check tenant options, I check lease expirations, and then I go ahead and I follow up with my A's, my B's, and C's, depending on my cadence. You simply just come in here and you say filter, play, and that information will show. You want to see the information on a map, that's awesome. If you then want to take that information and pull up the companies that lease a space, and from there, pull up the contacts so you can email them out of the program and let them know that their lease is coming due in, you know, a year and a half or 6 months, or a thank you letter. You can do it all within inside of the program. And that will allow you then to be 18 to 24 months or more ahead of the curve instead of calling them of a lease expiration or 6 months or 12 months, because your competitors are doing just that. You can also use the information in here to make sure that you have target offerings. Maybe you recently just leased a space in an area and you want to use that filter in the information, but you don't want to go ahead and email it to somebody you just talked to. Again, all these data points will allow you to make sure that you're getting in front of the clients at the right time. So you're always doing targeted offering. You're getting in front of them with a reason to call, and you're starting when the lease is signed instead of 3 months or 6 months before the lease is done, and always have a purpose to add value. Now, in doing all this, whether it's from the contacts, the company, the properties, whether it's your ABCs, your 1, 2, 3s, as you're building that information, you're getting very personal. It also allows you to brand yourself. Branding you is more important than anything you can ever imagine. Having a brand, because sending an email is only as good as someone opening the email. So each one of these things you can send. I created an email that says enhancing our client experience with RealNex Transaction Manager. And I gave the clients 5 reasons why they should look at using Transaction Manager next time when they're doing a lease deal. This might be something that I want to talk to a client 18 months prior to let them know how I do business differently than the other tenant reps in the market. And this is a way that I can shortlist and negotiate the lease much better. I also have access to all my lease comps with inside the RealNex program, so I'm able to negotiate the leases better. I understand how tenant improvements work different with different leases, and I can help them get the most tenant improvements at the lowest lease rate, including possible free rent or whatever your would be. But we want to get the clients thinking about this way, way, way ahead of time. Now, all this stuff can be recorded in here, like your opens, your clicks, and opt-outs. So you might have a client that say, hey, Matt, thanks for letting me know my lease expires in 24 months and that you're a little bit different than other people I've worked with in the past. I'd like to give you an opportunity to meet with me because we're actually looking to expand and we need 3 additional spaces to lease. Or, hey, wow, that was amazing that you brought this up to my attention about our multifamily property. That was in a portfolio sale that we got through an auction in distress, back in 2007. We totally forgot it was there. Love for you to sell it, right? Those are ways that you can get in front of clients and you can prioritize your prospecting and keep things easy. Now, all those events that you're going to create will show in your calendar, they'll show in your dashboard, and they'll synchronize to your Outlook or Gmail. Now, you can tell whether it's part of a reoccurring event by seeing this circle, wheel, arrow thing. I don't know the right terminology for that. Jeff usually tells me about carrots and different things within inside the program. This one here, you can tell it's part of a timeline, and you can even click on it to see where you're at in the timeline and what has been completed. So again, those are great ways, and you can see that. So instead of spending 30 and 45 minutes each night planning your day out, your day should be planned out for you days, weeks, or months ahead of time. So when you come in, I can see that I have to call my A clients. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to finish this with history. That, boom, there we go. Now I'm going to call my A clients again, and I'm good to go. Now I can go on to execute my listing agreement. So it just makes it so much easier of a process when you have it into a cadence like that. And that's why we want to make sure that you prioritize your prospecting. And think about ranking your active clients from A, B, and C. Fully engage in monthly, quarterly, and annual. Set timelines, and don't forget to drip them. And I don't mean put them in a drip email campaign and send it to them. I'm talking about a call, a text, an email, continuous follow-up with value add, brand yourself. Detailed ownership and acquisition profile so you can have a conversation on what's important to your client, whether that's a company or a contact with inside of the program. You're not going to remember it, put it inside of here. So this can be your central repository for everything. You can access it on your phone or your iPad, Android or Apple. Get into predictive analytics on typical hold periods and loan maturity. So again, you can get in front of it. Hey, Jeff, I saw you have a property. It looks like your typical hold pattern is about 5 to 7 years, and it's coming up on time in the next year for some of your properties. I'd love to sit down and have a conversation. Wow, that's fantastic, man. I'm thoroughly impressed on how you do business. Another thing you can do is you can track your lease renewals, options, and market events, because if you're not tracking them, somebody else is, and they're contacting your clients. As market events happen, maybe it's a big lease that just happened in the area, you can easily pull up that tenant information, pull up the companies and contacts, and email them right through our program to track your opens, clicks, and opt-outs, and see the engagements right inside of here. No chipmunky needed. It's all built in here with easy text templates, word templates. You can even drop in your own HTML from your marketing team. Pick up that cadence from 18 to 24 months and stay ahead of the curve, and have a purpose to add value. Always add value. They see ABC, always be closing. Now it should be ABV, always be valuing.
That's great, Matt. We're just up on time. There's a bunch to cover. Like a number of the highlights I saw in what you're talking about is just recap. When you went into real campaigns, you sent out a message to 37 people, 8 opened them. Again, that takes 37 follow-ups down to 8. 8 were interested. So you're really able to just hone in on those key prospects that showed a level of engagement. And if you had a link or something to download in there, you would even see those clicks. So those 2 clicks are even better. So instead of calling 37 or 8, call the 2. Those are the ones that you can probably close your deal with. You also talked about the timelines versus the groups, and I think it's fantastic that you're scheduling, because what's happening as you set up a timeline, as you set up events, you're filling next week's bucket and next year's bucket. So all of a sudden, as you're building and working through this process, as you said, your day is already planned with priorities. So as you're making calls this week and you have an A prospect that you take them out of the sequence because they're hot now, you've caught them in a motion and an opportunity. So then instead of it going to next month, it's going to tomorrow, or it's going to Tuesday, or it's going to whatever the action date is. So you're getting more and more refined and accurate. Even from your C's, you get them out of that sort of that cultivation cadence into an action cadence, and then you're dropping them into Monday's follow-up. So all of a sudden you're just building and building and filling your priorities for each day and making sure you've got them taken care of. And then you're backing that up with the routine groups and the filters to make sure that you're never missing a beat and always staying in front. But those lease renewal timelines, when you program that out for 5 years, you're golden. If you always stay on top of that, no one's going to beat you to the punch to get in front of that renewal, as you talked about. One of the ways that we find is golden in that adding value to a call is the comps. And if you're not tracking comps, I know it's sometimes hard to get, particularly lease comps, but if you're able to build your comp library well, that's a great, both real campaign, email message, or a voice message or reason to call to say, hey, Suzanne, I see that your lease is coming up for renewal in 18 months. Just leased 5 spaces in the area. We're seeing this, and this, and one at 1 Main Street just leased for $32 a square foot. Giving them some real-time information. They can say, what were the terms and how did that work, and whatever you're able to disclose, you can. So real fresh, timely information, and using it with merging data from your database about their property and the subject property that you're talking about really adds tremendous value. George was asking about voice, the auto dictation, Matt. Where and how can you use that throughout the system?
So Joyce, so George has to buy me a blueberry coffee, and if you're on a PC, all you have to do is hit the Windows key and the letter H, and your native voice dictation will pop up, and that will work with inside of pretty much any of the text fields within inside of RealNex. If you're on a Mac, you're going to have to Google that or Bing it and just put in Mac voice dictation, and you'll work on that. I am not a Mac user. I do have a beautiful iMac at home, but I am a one-finger keyboard warrior. So I do not type well. I'm not really good with computers, Excel, PowerPoint. I accelerate at RealNex, underwriting deals, prospecting, and so forth on our platform. Other than that, you're going to have to hit up Google. I also want to talk about the comps. We've added a functionality within the program to create lease and sales comps directly off the project. So when you do use projects and you close out a deal, it makes it so much easier to create a comp now within our program, where you can have it do not change owner, change owner. You can have procuring and listing agent. It fills all the blanks in for you. You can have it update the property financial section with values from the sale listing tab, or you can clear the values within it and create it. And that's going to build up your comp library. And I'm telling you, everything that's proprietary to you, that word is going to be used over the next 10 years, 20 years, proprietary. It's going to mean more than ever. As data is out there everywhere, the more information that you have that you can hold tight to your chest, I think the better you're going to be able to negotiate deals and work deals and get deals done. And we're starting to see that now, where people in the market that have been using our program can value properties completely different than other people. And I've seen these valuations come in differently, from whether it's a couple $100,000 or it's tens of millions of dollars valuation difference, because they were able to have the information in here with boots on the ground, with importing and aggregating within our program. When you import data, one thing that's important is we can merge up to 100 records at a time. So let this be your repository of source. We do have an open API you can access. So if you want to bring in and tie APIs into all your data sources and all your tools, go over and click on the RX data tab and go wild. And
two more. Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Two more things. One, on that comps piece, what we do with RX data is really powerful, and not only bringing in comps and enabling you to see the comp, but by changing the buyer and seller, we're doing 2 things. One, we're matching, and we're seeing what that hold period was that Matt was talking about, and we're building a buyer profile. So not only is it a comp and a static comp, but since we have a relational database, that comp and that owner is saying that Matt buys multifamily in San Diego. He just bought a 4-plex, he just bought an 8-plex, he just bought a 16. Oh, now he's bought a 32. All of a sudden you're seeing what he's bought and what his portfolio looks like. So you know everybody that bought what in that area, and you're able to then sell your next property to the most likely buyers. And finally, a question on creating a sale comp from a property record. And no, RX data does not have lease comps as well. We give you the property and some tenant info, a rent, sort of I call it a roster of tenants in that address, but not their the financial details. You would need to build that or get that from your market sharing and how you collaborate with other agents or the knowledge that you have on your team. But here's just show the sales comp creation from a listing, Matt, or from a property.
Yeah, I mean, they're right here. So property, hit create comp, property, buyer, any sale information you want, pretty easy. And again, we give you the ability to create another sequence off here. So you create the comp and you want to create a sequence of timelines. Here you go. You have it all right here. Just tie it into there and then you can select your timeline. So when you do create that comp and hit save, it'll enact that timeline. It also goes ahead and records the property and then it adds a link to it so you can see every time it traded. One last thing while we're on the comps, if you go click here on RX data, we did add a new section in here for you. And what it does is it gives you a quick little map for sales comp maps and lease comp maps. You can download the map right here by clicking on the blue download sales comp map. The reason why I like this comp import for sales and lease comp is it not only will find the property if it's in your database, but it will also attach the comp to it. So it builds a relationship for you, and that relationship is super powerful. So if you've been importing comps from the internal CRM, start looking at going to the RX data side. There's no cost for you to access this. You just simply go ahead and you can download our template. You can rename your headers. You put it in here, select a group, select a team, and then hit verify. And when you hit verify, it'll make sure everything is correct before it imports it in. It'll find the originating space. It'll link the lease comp to that space so you can see every time that space is traded or that property is traded. Again, super powerful information, so you're not giving it out for free to your competitors.
That's it, Matt. Great job. Thank you all for attending, and we will hopefully see you next week with our quarterly market update with Dr. Fisher. So looking forward to hearing what he has to say on new trends and conditions that he's finding in his research with the institutional investors that he advises. So, and we appreciate your attendance, and we'll send out a recap of this tomorrow or Monday, and see you next week.
See you, everybody.